Welcome everybody. Welcome to Homestead Heart. And today, getting ready to get started on the last wall of the chicken house, which is, good boy, the last wall of the chicken house, which is the west wall. And it's also one that I thought was going to be the hardest due to the way that I'm doing the layout for the windows and the doors, but I don't think it's going to be that hard. I think we'll be able to get it. But anyway, today I wanted to do a quick little talk about off-grid. You know, had the question posed to me a couple of times on, whoo, girl, don't you fall. I've had the question posed to me a couple of times. My baby girl's back out here to help me, y'all. But I've had the question posed to me. Oh, just 'cause you're special. But anyway. Is it heavy?
Huh?
Is it heavy?
Well, you got like 4 or 5 hammers in here.
Yeah, it's a lot of hammers in there. A drill or two.
All these crickets.
All right, your juice is on the table.
Yeah, I know.
Uncover those strawberries. Just one side. I'll be back. I'm going to walk and talk. So anyway, I had a question posed to me about what my thinking was on going off grid. And I have to admit, depending on the way you grew up, that might be a big deal. And it might not be. So for me, that's not a big deal. My grandparents, if you want to call it off grid, you know, it wasn't called off grid then. It was just called life, surviving, and making do with what you have and making the best out of what you have. That's what it was called then, but now it has the fancy name, off grid, and makes it sound all interesting and exciting, you know, and it can be. But that's just the way a lot of us just grew up anyway. So it's nothing new to us, you know, it's no biggie. My grandparents, in their house, there was no electricity. Didn't have solar panels and all of that stuff then. Had lanterns. Seriously, you and Grizz do the same thing. Y'all always wait till I film to stop and do that. But in any case, they had lanterns, you know. I remember these big old oil lanterns. I'll never forget them. I felt like they was big as my head, bigger than me. But they were huge. This way, Jax. So that's what we had. Water. We had a well in the back, an old well. And my grandpa had a really big board across the top of the well to keep things from getting down in it. And had a bucket that was tied to, wow, this pond really looks good. Had a bucket that was tied to, I don't know, some kind of rope or something. And whenever you wanted water, you would go out, take the board down, and I was a little girl, so you would take the board off, lower the bucket, it would fall all the way down, seemed like it was dropping forever, and you'll hear it hit the water, boosh. and then it would fill with water, and then you had to pull and pull to haul it back up the well. And it seemed like that took forever when they would let me try to help them, right? And so that's how we got our water, and the water was cold. I just never forget. I don't care how hot it was outside. The water was cold and it was good, you know. It was refreshing. It was good water. So, yeah. And as far as cooking and heating, my grandparents had this old wood stove. It was black. I never forget that. And that joker would burn the fire out of you. I mean, you better not touch it. And it sat almost in the middle of the floor between the front of the house and the kitchen. And that wood stove, my grandma used to cook on top of it. And it had this little box on the inside where she would make pies and breads and things like that, you know. So that's kind of how we lived, or how my grandparents lived, and I was exposed to that. But that's how they lived their entire time on their farm in the country when I was a child. That's the way my grandmother was raised. I mean, I'm talking about my grandmother, her parents, my great grandparents, in their house. That's the way it was, you see. And that's the way my grandmother and her siblings, that's the way they were all raised. And my mother, when they lived in that house, that's the way that they were raised. So I was exposed to that as a child because my great grandparents were still very much alive and thriving when I was a little girl. And so when I would go to visit with them and stay with them sometimes, yeah, I was Jax. So yeah, when I would go and stay with them, visit with them, you know, whatever, then that's how we lived. If we wanted to read, we did it during the day outside on the front porch, because I love reading when I was a child. So reading was a big thing for me. I would sit out on the front porch and read, you know. And at night, if I wanted to read, I could sit at the little table, and man. And in that little house, my great grandparents had 12 children or 14 children or something that they raised in that house, you know. So when we were young, that's just what I was exposed to. But that's the way many of our parents and grandparents were raised anyway, so-called off-grid, you know. So to me, I guess it doesn't frighten me, you know, with you know, I mean the in today's modern times, the stoves are better. The options for electricity are much better. The options for well water now are better because now you don't have to drop a bucket. Now you can have an electric pump, or you can have a hand pump that's manual. You have, you know, better options now due to technology. You know, as time progresses, things just get a little better, and people figure out how to make life a little easier. You know, so if I had to say, if my grandparents could do it then, and it was much more difficult than it is today, man, it's a piece of cake today to do it now with the way that they have technology now. You know, like we have a well right now, and we use propane gas. But if we didn't use propane gas to heat our house, we're getting a wood stove. So we would have the wood stove to heat our house. And, you know, anything, if you've never ever done it, there's going to be a learning curve. But could you do it? Yeah, you know, living like that doesn't mean like you're in the Stone Ages. You don't have to go to that. You know, there are people who live very well not being connected to public utilities, you know. So in today's time, with this modern technology, yeah, I think you can live off grid successfully. I would say do your research and study it. And and just know, you know, it causes come on, Jack, let's go. I would caution you to use mm, how do I say? I would just simply say you have to be mindful is the word I'm looking for. You have to be mindful of your electricity usage when you have solar or windmill or whatever is going to be powering your home. You just can't leave lights on all willy-nilly. You got to teach the children, you know. Don't burn electricity if you're not using it. Don't have the light on and you outside playing. But truth be told, whether you on or off grid, most parents don't play that. I know my mama didn't. And when I was bringing up my children, don't make me have to come in a room and turn the light off behind you. Okay? You have to be, more conservative with your water usage. You just can't, don't be in the shower for 30 minutes. When you want that water to be hot, don't be in the shower for 30 minutes if you're going to consider being disconnected from public utilities. So with everything, there's a learning curve, but you don't have to live like, our grandparents did in the early 1900s. Man, my granny was born in the 30s, and her parents in the late 1800s. So you don't have to necessarily live like that, anymore. Like I said, times have changed and things are better. So I can't necessarily say, off-grid to me is a big deal. It's not. I grew up that way. I grew up that way. So, and I'm working my way back to that. The only utility we have that we're still connected is electricity. But the plan is to get rid of that really soon too. What is that? Oh. The plan is to disconnect from that altogether and get solar. Once we get it all straightened out here, then our next big project is solar. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this whole off-grid. I know some people are excited to do it. Some people are terrified of it, and like I said, if you've never ever had this experience before where your grandparents or your parents or whatever, you've never experienced it before, that's going to be a learning curve for you. And I would suggest studying it. I wouldn't just I'm going off the grid. Because, if you don't prepare for it, you're going to be like, we're going back on the grid. So I would just say do your research, study. Study if you've never had the experience. But for somebody like me, it's just a fancy word. Off-grid is just a fancy new word or way of saying it's the way we used to do it. It's the way our grandparents and Big Mama and my dear, that's the way my Big Mama and my dear were raised. Yeah. So anyway, y'all, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. Sometimes something can sound so terrifying and it's not. With everything that is new, you have to just be diligent in your research and prepare and plan, to make it a smooth transition if that's what you want to do. But don't be afraid. Remember, as long as you believe you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish. Anything. Yeah. So with that being said, folks, actually, do I recommend it? I got to admit, as for me and mine, I absolutely positively, that's the direction we're moving to. Yeah. That's where we're headed. That's for me and mine. But as for you and yours, you do the study, you make the decision because you know what you can and cannot handle. All right? So with that being said, you all, thank you so much for watching Homestead Heart. Peace and blessings to you all. I'm going to get to this chicken coop now. We'll see you in the next video.